you very much, Tarek. Pleasure to be here with you and with the panel. So indeed, let's start from where Elena was also starting, and I think that's the title of our panel. The situation on the continent, still 450 million poor Africans, 300 million without access to electricity, and over the next 10 years, 5 years, maybe 500 million young Africans getting to the labor market on one side. And on the other side, Elena mentioned ODA, development aid, but it's also FDI, investments that has been going down, debt that has been going up. So there's a big gap between the two. What can be done? I would indeed start with the private sector side. So that's what you mentioned. The resource of the continent is on the private sector. And here it's a lot about how you get the governments out of the way of the private sector to create an enabling environment for the private sector to thrive in Africa. You still have a lot of state-owned businesses in Africa that are preventing private investors from coming in. And then there are cases where we can do better combining the strengths of the state and the strengths of the private sector. So take a number of infrastructure projects that cannot be fully financed by governments because debt is too high and it's too expensive, that cannot be financed fully by private sector because the risks over a long period are too high, and they are increasingly good financing structures to combine the strengths of the two, to combine the strength, the capital mobilization of the private sector with the risk-bearing capacity for de-risking of the public sector. So that's, I would say, the first one. The second, because the session is on the development finance institutions, we at the World Bank, EBRD, and others have a role to really make every pound that we have count like 5 pounds. So how do we stretch our balance sheets? How do we ourselves mobilize private capital? So our private sector arm at the World Bank, which is called IFC, has increased significantly their program in Egypt, and worldwide has grown extremely rapidly, not only on their own account, but mobilizing private sector. And then we're also finding new ways to stretch our balance sheets. So for the past 10 years, our fund for Africa, which is called IDA, is also raising capital, private capital on markets, which wasn't the case before. Most recently, there was an interesting transactions by IFC to take some of their loans on their books and sell them to the market to be able to reinvest more in developing countries. So that's the second. And the third, I would say, is the way governments, DFIs, and private sector are doing projects, that it shouldn't be just transactions. It should actually be transformation with the right policies and the right technology. I think there was an earlier mention to AI, huge potential to transform the way some of these development challenges are approached. In the Edo state of Nigeria, we work with the government to assess the use of AI for teaching, and then for basic teaching, literacy. And then we can evaluate that in 6 weeks, these kids, with the help of AI, were able to get 2 years of learning. 6 weeks, 2 years. So we also have a lot of options through technology to drastically increase the impact that every single investment we make can bring to Africa.
But you know, you're talking about the supply side. There has to be a demand side for that to consume all this talent that is coming. So, I mean, in this respect, you know, I mean, I would maybe pass on the question to Mark. Maybe, you know, Africa has been more of a commodity-based, historically, economies, you know, and in this respect, when you look even at the infrastructure, intercontinental infrastructure, there is no connectivity as such. So this kind of logistical integration is still yet to exist, you know. Are there any ideas of looking at the continent on a regional basis rather than on a country-by-country basis? I'm saying that, you know, in a context that EBRD has been one of the most instrumental tools here in Egypt for the last 10, 12, 13 years, you know. But then again, you know, it's only localized as such. So I don't know, I would like to get your take when it comes to that.
Sure.
I talked about a few, and Egypt, I think, is a good example to look at. So, number one...
Or how can we lure? How can we lure private capital to come in, considering all what's been said?
First, make it easy to do business. So, simpler taxes, fast clearance through customs, fair courts, predictability. Predictability is really important, predictability in the rules. I think predictability is one of the cheapest industrial policy you can find. Some of this is happening in Egypt. It's not making headlines, but it really makes a difference to the life of business. And there's much to go on that front. The second is the level playing field that I mentioned earlier. Level playing field so that the government-run businesses doesn't get in the way of private investors. There's a lot of entrepreneurship and capacity to innovate and trade in Egypt historically and still today that needs to be unleashed by reforming the role of the state. Very promising to see the state ownership policy will be revised and further improved soon. And the third, I would say, invest in people. It's often said quickly that the main assets of the continent or the country is the people. But what does that mean? That means then you have to invest in those people. At the moment, in a country like Egypt, but a lot of countries on the continent, fiscal space is very limited. So getting good macro stability, creating jobs, to be able to turn around the fiscal space and then investing in the things that matter most, health, education, social protection, will really make a difference. So I would vote for those three: simplicity for businesses, level playing field between the role of the state and the role of the private sector, investing in people. And I think those will be the source of creating jobs, will unleash the domestic capital that is already in Africa. It's not just about attracting external capital. It will unleash the capital already here and will attract international capital.